Meanwhile, growing unrest in places like Portland, Oregon. Thousands were there involved in a violent uprising that's been going on since May, causing federal law enforcement to intervene. President Trump says he will make it clear that unrest in these largely liberal cities will not continue on his watch.
We're not going to let New York and Chicago and Philadelphia and Detroit and Baltimore, we're not going to let this happen in our country. People say protesters, these people are anarchists. These are people that hate our country.
Anarchists? Like, all the protesters out there are anarchists. Everybody that they're just snatching and grabbing are anarchists. But just because they're anarchists doesn't mean that you can just, kidnap them off the streets. And oddly enough, Trump hates anarchists and Antifa, but he supports white power, white nationalism, KKK members, and neo-Nazis. We have a fascist president through and through. I mean, Trump did retweet the video of a guy saying white power.
And we're not going to let it go forward.
Joining me right now is Acting Customs and Border Protection Commissioner Mark Morgan. Commissioner, it's great to see you this morning. Thanks very much for joining me. What can the federal government do about this? First, assess the situation, what we're seeing in these large cities across the country, and what can you do about it?
Well, the president is right. It's anarchy. And let's be clear, we're not talking about the peaceful protesters. What we're talking about are those individuals have hijacked these peaceful protests, and they're criminals. Let's talk about Portland right now. And, Maria, let's be clear. The federal presence right now in Portland, we are there to do our statutory responsibility to protect federal buildings. That's why.
Well, you're going to use that video of a guy just standing there getting struck by the cops as, like, criminal activity? I mean, how are you gonna justify, these cops, like, doing this? It makes no sense whatsoever. If the cops weren't there increasing the amount of violence, we wouldn't have this happening. We can just, if the city actually listened to people instead of just, having cops, well, this time it's the federal government. So if the system actually were to listen, things would be different.
Why we're there. And well before we deployed additional resources, there was violence already going in Portland. That's one of the false narratives. And we actually had credible information that these criminals were actually going to attack the federal courthouse. So we deployed additional resources there. And guess what happened, Maria? The criminals, they did just that. And the first days we were inside the building.
Yeah, in that clip you can see who was being most violent. It was the cops with their batons, military gear, shooting CS gas and the such. Didn't really. You see, when the cops arrive and start attacking people, that is usually when protests erupt into more violence. So if we were to remove the weaponry and the such from the cops, we can see things turn into a different situation. Like when the anti-lockdown protests happened, none of the cops arrived in riot gear and shot the people with CS gas and struck them with batons. The cops just stood around and, kept people from going into the buildings and stuff, but it was, for the most part, extremely nonviolent. But when you have people going against the system, this is when you have cops arrive in riot gear and start assaulting people.
They attacked the building. They broke through the doors. They tried to enter the building and assault the federal agents who are there. That is criminal behavior, and there must be consequences, and it can't be tolerated, and this president isn't going to tolerate that.
Well, what do they want, Mark? I mean, I understand initially, what took place after George Floyd was murdered, but at the same time, this is now going on for a long time. Do they want something different today, a month and a half later?
That's funny. Do they want something different today? No, it's the same thing that people have been wanting since the founding of Black Lives Matter, since before that. Uh, they want equal treatment within the system that we live in, which is ending the racial inequality that is the United States. Uh, Defund the cops, and as well as use that resources to help improve the community, give the cops better training. Um, it's not that one person dies and people riot over that one person. It's an accumulation of things. There's been so many people dying at the hands of cops in the system that we live in, and people are fed up with it. And the ever increasing police violence against protesters just proves that this system just wants to commit violence against people who seek equality. Uh, Ever since the protests started happening, we just had incident after incident after incident of cops attacking people. And now it's getting worse with federal cops being sent to kidnap and attack people.
Look, what I see, what I understand as a career law enforcement, what you're seeing out right now, the criminal actions going on right now, Maria, has nothing to do with the tragic death of George Floyd. It has nothing to do with coming together to have reasonable dialogue that really leads to actionable items that really need to be done to increase the trust and confidence of those we protect and serve.
Okay, you want reasonable dialogue? Well, if that's the case, why wasn't anybody listening to Black Lives Matter when people were kneeling for the pledge and were called un-American? They were told they hated America and to shut up and just get back to work. It doesn't make any sense when people peacefully protest and get ignored, and then when it ends up getting to the point of being extremely large protests, cops come in and commit violence, things erupt into a lot more chaos, and then people are like, why are you guys violent? Why can't you just be rational adults and talk peacefully? When that has been going on for pretty much decades.
These are criminals and anarchists that have an agenda that has nothing to do with George Floyd. And the American people, I believe that they understand that and they know that this is unacceptable. Maria, we have law enforcement officers. These individuals are willfully, knowingly planning, coordinating, and organizing every night to go with the willful intent to destroy federal property and injure and seriously harm federal agents.
Oh, they're harming federal property. Oh no, that is so horrible. What are we ever going to do? It's not like we can't, rebuild these buildings or, repaint these buildings. And if federal agents stop attacking people, people wouldn't have to defend themselves and the federal agents wouldn't get hurt. It's as simple as that.
In what world is that acceptable? It's not. And this president is not going to accept it.
because
Well,
he's
I
a
believe
fascist.
New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio said, look, we're going to protect New York and we're not going to allow federal agents to come in. You've got Kentucky Senator Rand Paul pushing back on the federal response in Portland. He tweeted this yesterday: we cannot give up liberty for security. Local law enforcement can and should be handling these situations in our cities, but there is no place for federal troops or unidentified federal agents rounding people up at will.
Which is true. We cannot have unidentified federal agents kidnapping people off the streets just because Trump wants to protect federal monuments. That is, nowhere in the Constitution does the president have such authority. And it is good that there are a good number of people fighting against this and not letting it go ignored like it has previously.
Commissioner, what's the response?
Maria, with all due respect, the senator's misinformed. Again, we are under their statutory authority, 40 U.S.C., there to protect federal property. We're not out in the streets doing local law enforcement job with respect to the peaceful protesters. We are there protecting federal property. We have authority.
We're there protecting federal property. Federal property. It's property. Who cares? It's just materials. People always want to make it seem like property, the condition of property outweighs the life of a person or people. No, it doesn't. People are more important than property, and if that means federal property gets destroyed, well, it happens. It can easily be rebuilt. But the fact that these people care so much about federal property or property in general to the point that they're going to justify the kidnapping of people and the violation of people's human rights, that it's just, to me, it makes them look like to me they look like psychopaths and sycophants for this kind of behavior. uh, None of it is totally justified, but Fox News will try to justify it in whatever way they can.
Authority. And when we go off federal property, it is to do our job. We have probable cause and legal authority that someone has committed a felony, specifically assaulted a federal law enforcement officer. That's what you saw in that viral video. And if I could, real quick, Maria, if I could address another false narrative that they're unmarked, military troopers. That's just absolutely false. They are law enforcement personnel, and they have at least 6 markings on them that says police, the CBP, Border Patrol. It's all identified. That's another false narrative that's out there that's very frustrating.
Unbelievable. Oregon Senators Jeff Merkley and Ron Wyden, meanwhile, along with Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy, have drafted a new bill they say will end the, quote, paramilitary occupations in major cities where federal officers were sent in. Your reaction to this bill they're drafting?
So, Oregon and Connecticut were 2 places they were sent in. It looks like it's really good that there are people, acting swiftly on this. I wish they could act more swiftly when police are doing the same or committing the same behavior.
It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Again, I'll go back to the facts. We are there. We had credible actual intelligence information that the courthouse was going to be attacked. That's why we deployed additional resources there to protect federal property, and that's exactly what happened. And guess what? The state and locals, we don't need their permission for federal resources to come in to protect the citizens that they won't protect.
They make it sound like there is a war going. Well, kinda in a way. It's a civil war. Federal troops are attacking and occupying cities that don't want these people in them, and cities are sovereign themselves. If the mayor or the governor of a state doesn't want the federal troops in there, they can have them removed. They done it with the DEA and stuff. So the fact that these people think that they can pretty much do whatever they want is not true.
We don't need their permission. And we're going to be there. And in Portland,
So
we're
what do you?
staying.
So what are you expecting?
Oh, in Portland they're staying. So that means they're probably going to be there for a while, which means, in my opinion, that the people of Portland need to kind of gear up and protect themselves a bit better. Um, if they're going to be doing a lot more kidnapping, people need to be going out in groups or something.
From the president, then, that the federal troops will stay, or is there something else coming in terms of bringing law and order back?
Look, I'm not going to get ahead of the president and what he's specifically going to do, but I do know that this president and this administration is committed to law and order, and we're going to do just that. As a CBP commissioner, I'm going to support this secretary and the deputy secretary and this attorney general, who all agree with law and order, a cornerstone of American society.
I find that really funny how they always talk about law and order while doing something illegal, or supporting something illegal by the president. It's just like, it's kind of mind-blowing at times. It's like you pretend to be about justice while committing a bunch of crimes. It's just really mind-blowing.
I'm going to be standing with them shoulder to shoulder to support them on what we need to do to regain law and order in these cities, apply consequences to criminals. Look, American people, Maria, they want to be safe. They want to be able to walk outside and not think that they're going to get shot or be the victim of a violent crime.
Wow, yeah, that's what black people want. That's why there's Black Lives Matter, because they want to be able to, black people want to be able to, walk down the street without having to fear being killed by the cops. It's hilarious how these people like see a point but miss it at the same time. It's these people are so confusing at times.
I know that that's what
course.
American citizens want, and that's what we're committed to.
No.
So are you expecting federal troops to go into other cities? Which cities? Putting Portland aside.
Yeah, so right now, again, I'm not going to get ahead of the president. And Maria, I know you don't mean this, but I think federal troops, I think we have to, words matter. These are federal law enforcement officers and agents that are going to go into areas that need assistance to help either state and local or further support and apply consequences to those committing federal crimes. That's what we're talking about, law and order. So I'm going to let the president
this is really
announce
important
that.
Yeah, and it's very important that you make the distinction. So thank you for that. It's law and order. It's officers going in to ensure that there is law and order brought back. Mark, what are you seeing at the border today, given the COVID-19 issues and the crime across the country? What's happening that you can tell us about coming into the country?
Okay, so it looks like they're gonna start talking about COVID-19 at the border. It seems like when talking about the protesters, they want to talk about COVID-19 and the border. Maybe that's because some of the agents involved and the kidnappings are border patrol agents. But it's yeah, so Trump is probably going to be sending out more federal soldiers to various other states and cities. So be on the lookout if you start seeing unmarked vehicles. It may be some agents looking to kidnap people. From what I've read, their rental vehicles, and Enterprise is either the only one renting to these federal agents or one of the few rental agencies. But watch out, enterprise is also working with the federal government to kidnap people.
Well, thanks, Marie. That's a really great question. And right now, I think it's very important. The major focus right now on the southwest border, but